Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters and dear friends. Welcome to another episode of The Aftermath. Today we're going to be talking about Muhammad Hijab's debate with Uncle Edward. Yes, that's what I'm going to refer to him as. Was it Edward Taabash? Yeah. He was a nice gentleman. So yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to delve into it and talk about how Hijab found it, how he found his opponent when he first met him, to after the debate, during the debate. So Hijab, welcome. It's not even a show, but we'll just do a little welcome there. So, okay, before the debate, when you heard about this guy, what was going through your head? You know, because he looks younger in the picture, and he was dressed well. You know, he had a good swagger, but he was, how old is he?
I think he's 70 years old.
Yeah, well,
something
he was.
like that.
Yeah. So, did you feel a bit like 6'6" guy, and did you feel a bit like a bully or something?
That's one of the concerns I had.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, he's the same age as my dad, so I had to show him that respect. You know, as a human being and as someone who's been through so much in life, and someone who's had so much more experience than me in debating and in kind of going through the arguments. And so. The first thing you got to do, obviously, is show respect, and I really wanted to make sure that came through in that debate.
Okay, so if you remember when he first came down the stairs and we met him, yeah, he seemed like a jolly guy. You know, he seemed like, what was your first impressions?
I think that he was immediately talking to us about some of the works that he was doing for Muslims and in America as a lawyer. And stuff like that. So I felt that he wanted to engage with us positively as a community. Yeah. And whenever there's anyone that wants to engage with us as Muslims positively, I think the most decent thing to do is to extend the olive branch and to...
Yeah, with open arms,
Yeah, with open arms, and to really accept that from them. Because we're living in an age and time now in the West where there's so many forces against us, political, social and economic, that... those who want to show kindness and respect and peace to us have to be shown all of that back to them.
Well, of course, yeah. After all that hostility around the world, we do need a bit of empathy. We do, and we did see that in him when we first met him. How he said that, for example, he said to us how our journey was coming into California. Was it easy? How we came in, and he said, if it wasn't, you could have. I would have, because he said something like he would have. He said if I came to know that you was having trouble, he goes, I would have helped you.
Yeah.
And we need to give credit where it's due, and we really appreciate that from him. He was a nice gentleman. Okay, so you went straight into the debate, with your new argument. How did it go? Do you think, because you did make some strong cases there where you said, look, if you crack this, you have cracked,
He's cracked everything.
Yeah.
Well, people should know I've actually written a small book, which is actually part of my postgraduate kind of like work on philosophy, medieval philosophy in particular, on the cosmological argument. And I looked at, obviously when you look at the cosmological argument, you look at it goes all the way back to the Hellenistic period. So it goes all the way back to Aristotle. It goes all the way back to, the Greek philosophers. But you could say it had more than one kind of time period. One of the major time periods, in fact, was the Islamic time period. So I look at some of the key thinkers in that time period, look at the different forms of the argument, and at the end of the book, and this book has been pretty much written now, and it's going to come out very soon, probably in the next couple of weeks, maybe
Inshallah.
2 weeks.
Is that the only book that's coming out?
This is I've written another one, but that's going to come out maybe after that, inshallah.
Yeah, sure.
But these are small books, and they don't take that long to read. Maybe an hour and a half at maximum, because I realize nowadays doing the research that 100,000 word books, which is the typical size of the book, of a normal book, people don't usually finish them to the end. And so I've decided, instead of spending 3 years writing a 100,000 word book, to spend 3 years writing maybe 10,000 word books, which are really like, in academic terms, a big journal article is about 7,000 words. That's a big journal article. A journal article that's peer reviewed, you can usually get to 3,000 to 5,000. A massive one would be 7,000. A book usually, if it's an academic piece, it can range from anything between 70,000 to 100,000. Is medium size. And so when we say 10,000 word books, we're talking about very thin books that can be read in one day. But the point is, the two principles have motivated me in doing this. One of them is that the less you write, the less chance you have of making a mistake. You know, if I write 100,000 words, then I have 90,000 more chances of making mistakes, especially with complex arguments. Number two is it gives people like an injection of my thought process in most condensed terms. And it gives them the main gist of what I'm trying to get at. I could expand this to 100,000 words in the future, or 200 or 300,000 words. But let's see how it goes first. So the reason why I brought this up is because the history of the cosmological argument, as I was talking about before, it took 3 or 4 different major turning points. One of them was the Hellenistic time period, like Greek philosophy and stuff like that. Then you had the Islamic Islamic, what we call Islamicate, so where Muslim empires were supreme and where they had reign. And so thinkers in that, even if they could not necessarily have to be Muslim. There's lots of Christians and Jewish scholars in that period and that time in those places, like Maimonides, for example, Musa ibn Mayun, who wrote Dalalat al-Ha'irin, the Guide to the Perplexed. He was one of the Kalam thinkers, and people say that he's, the biggest scholar of all of Jewish history. They call him the second Moses, in fact. And this scholar, he wrote on this, built upon the work of previous Kalam scholars of, like Al-Ghazali, for example. He wouldn't be considered a Kalam scholar, but people that had mentioned or talked about, the existence of God and made arguments for the existence of God. And obviously then you had the outgrowth of Christian scholarship like Thomas Aquinas and stuff like that, which benefited and inherited from those things. So you could say a lot of it was based on Hellenistic philosophy, a lot of it was based on Islamic philosophy, and then you had the Renaissance and Enlightenment periods. This is in the West. I'm not too familiar with what's going on in kind of philosophies, in India and Africa in relation to proving God's existence. But I think those are the main centers where those arguments were being put forward. So the book I do focuses on the Islamicate region, and it focuses on 2 of the most prominent arguments of the Islamicate period, which subsequently have been taken in from Enlightenment thinkers, Renaissance Enlightenment thinkers, like for example the cosmological argument by Al-Ghazali. So everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. Now, we see this being very much popularized by people like William Lane Craig, and he wrote The Cosmological Argument, a book in 1979, I think, where he wrote another book from Plato to Leibniz, which is an extension from that book. A lot of people have been fascinated with that time period. Peter Adamson wrote an interesting book. He's got good resources online, kind of covering. But the point is, the point I'm making is it's very relevant to popular discourse. So these things are not just medieval arguments that are, these are very much popular arguments that are used on stages, in books, responded to by atheists and so on. So I spent a long time researching this and thinking about it. So hopefully the book is going to be that. And that's what I chose in terms of the contingency argument. It was a form of the contingency argument which had widespread support from different schools of thought in Islamic history. So the Atharis or the Salafis, the Ash'aris, the Mu'tazilis, and even the Shi'is. Because you'll be surprised, there was a book that was written initially called Al-Isharat wa-Tanbihat by Ibn Sina. And this book had a large commentarial tradition that even went to the Shia world, like At-Tusi, who is a Shi'i scholar. He wrote a commentary on this book. So there was a widespread, not all parts of obviously Ibn Sina's work was accepted. He was excommunicated, in fact, by Al-Ghazali in Tahafut al-Falasifa. But the point is, some of those things like wajib al-wujud, the necessary existence, and all of those things, they were investigated and accepted to a large extent. Ibn Taymiyyah accepted it, Al-Ghazali accepted this phraseology. The Ash'aris to a large extent accepted it, and so on. So we look at what is the thing that is accepted the most, and we make an argument based on that. So the contingency argument, people are not used to it yet. A lot of people are thinking, okay, well, let's just argue in the William Lane Craig fashion, right? Everything that begins to exist has a cause, the universe began to exist, and therefore the universe has a cause. That's a standard argument. It's a valid argument. It's a great argument. But then when you have an atheist interlocutor, especially that's read Enlightenment philosophy, especially if they've read Hume and Bertrand Russell, they're likely to come back and say, well, what about the fallacy of composition? What about, for example, what about the problem of induction? How can you assume that just because there's X amount of causes in the universe, that the universe itself has a cause? How can you assume that just because members of the human race have mothers, that the human race itself has a mother, like Bertrand Russell said? So that legitimate, as we said in the debate, it's a legitimate interrogation, but it's not a fallacy unless you can have a perfect knowledge of the whole. So in other words, do you see what I'm saying? So the point is, I try and avoid as many of those discussions as possible by bringing the most undercutting argument. Now, the only drawback with the argument is that it's a bit more complicated, and it doesn't rest on these neat premises that can easily be looked at in that abstracted format. So I think it was a difficult thing, because you remember, like before I was trying to put this argument to people and see if they understood it. The issue was we couldn't find enough robust analogies to make the image clear.
Well, we found something good. What you
mentioned, the tree, infinite, but a lot of people will still not understand.
I think they would understand. It's just you just need to a bit more repetitive in it.
Yes, I think if people get used to it, they'll get used to it.
Yeah, like after I would say going over it, we went over it probably 15 times. But I think on the play, around third or fourth time, I grasped it. I grasped it and I understood it, and it's quite profound. It's quite.
It is a powerful argument.
So. Do you want to just break it down for us, or do you want to save that for for surprises in the future?
No, I can. This argument is fine. So the argument, the strength of this argument, in my opinion, right, and not in just my opinion, in the opinion of many scholars that have looked at those arguments, is that it works in a cosmological way. Now, a cosmological argument is an argument with reference to the cosmos, So we're using physical, tangible examples of the world around us to make an argumentation, which is different to an ontological argument, which is more a mental, a priori rendition. So you're thinking in your mind, and you're thinking, So this is the difference between ontology and cosmology. A contingency argument can, by nature of its being, be cosmological, and it can be ontological as well. So contingency arguments don't have to be either or. They can be both. It's not practically impossible for them to be either or. Immanuel Kant divided the arguments for God's existence into three. He says it's either cosmological, ontological, or contingency. But that neat, separation doesn't need to exist. You can have an argument it fits into all three of those categories. So the strongest, in my opinion, part of this argument is that it works on metaphysics, a priori assumptions, as well as on cosmological ones. So in other words, it works with reference to the physical world, and it works with reference to abstract concepts in the mind, logical precepts in the mind, like almost mathematical precepts in the mind. So if someone says, well, this is applicable in the world, but it's not applicable in a realm which transcends the physical, we'll say, well, actually it's applicable in both. So it satisfies all curiosity. It satisfies the materialist, the dualist, and the idealist. So from that perspective, the argument is...
give us. So there's a lot of people that's watching this might be thinking, I don't know what language he's talking. So let's break it down for them. Okay, so let's first physically, cosmologically. Let's make them understand. So let's give you an analogy. So of the cosmological, the contingency argument.
Right. So, say for instance, this watch I'm wearing on my wrist right now. It doesn't need to be here. It doesn't need to exist. It could either exist or it could not exist. So it's not necessary. Something which is necessary is something which could not be any other way. So a necessary fact, usually philosophers say like 2 + 2 = 4 is necessary. Because you can't put 2 and 2 together equals 4 unless and get anything other than 4. 2 + 2, if you wipe away all the human beings on the earth, if 2 + 2 will always equal 4.
Like objective.
It's objective, but it's necessary, so it cannot be conceived of in any other way.
Can we say necessary objective truth?
Yes, absolutely. So it's necessary and it's objective as well, right? So 2 + 2 equals 4. Yeah.
Okay.
You can't. That's a necessary fact.
Okay,
right?
so let's get this right. So there's necessary, that can't be any other way.
Yes.
And there's possible,
Yes, which can be
another way. So you
It's
said, let's just...
So
just-
this watch could have been blue, it could have been green, it could have been yellow, it could have been pink.
Okay, so
right?
let me just do the tafsir of what you just said. Brothers and sisters,
Yeah, yeah.
What our brother's saying is very simple, yeah?
Yeah, please, yeah.
His watch that he has, yeah? His watch could have not exist. It could have been blue, it could have been green, it could have been a different shape, it could have been small, it could have been big.
That's right.
It could have been any other way, yeah? It's a possible existence
Yes.
that could be there or not be there, doesn't change nothing much.
Yes.
That's what that's a possible existence.
And it's dependent as well.
And it's dependent on the material, his hand. If his hand wasn't there, maybe he might wear it on his ear. We don't know, but
No, it doesn't depend on my hand. It
Yeah.
depends on-
It does depend, but the materials that it's made out of, yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay.
this depends on other things, and it could be any other way if it didn't exist. Okay, good. So we know that is possible existence. Okay.
Yes.
What's your
So
follow-up?
a necessary existence is the exact opposite of a possible existence. So it could not be any other way,
Okay,
right? And it's independent.
it's independent.
Yeah.
Okay, but someone might come and say, why is it independent? Why? Where did you get this from?
Why is it independent?
Yes.
Because it's not dependent. It's not dependent on any of its constituent
Okay,
parts.
so that's the key. So what you're saying is
Yeah.
the watch is dependent,
Yeah.
can be any other way. A necessary existence cannot be another way, and it has to necessarily be that way.
Like that.
Like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Good. Okay, we've understood
And
that.
it doesn't depend on any other thing
Yes.
in order to be the way it is.
Okay,
In
it's-
essence, by
okay.
virtue of essence.
Okay. All right, I understand. Okay, so
So
all right.
our job is just to show that there can be such a thing as a necessary existence.
Okay.
If we show that there's such a thing as a necessary existence,
Yes.
not a necessary fact like
Yes.
2 + 2 = 4.
Yes.
I'm talking about a necessary existence, an ultimate necessary existence. If we can show that, then our job is done.
Okay, then, but how do you show that? You've talked to us about necessary existence and possible existence. It can be another way. It cannot be another way. How bridge the connection?
So the way you show that is to show that a world cannot exist with only possible existence.
Okay, give me examples.
Because if you have possible existence, only possible existence together, you have, number one, you have things that could be any other way,
Yes.
and you have dependent things depending upon other dependent things.
Okay, let's start with the tree.
Okay.
Okay, give
right,
us
so
a
give an
tree
analogy, right? So
Yes.
a tree is a dependent thing, and it could be any other way. You can have a cherry tree, you can have a cedar tree, you can have, I don't know, what other trees you got, you know?
Okay.
Right, so it's a
okay,
possible existence.
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So what we're saying is as
Yeah.
simple as that. That tree is always going to depend upon something else for its existence.
Okay, like the
Say,
sun.
for example, the sun, right? Because it needs it to photosynthesize.
Yeah.
Without the sun, the tree would not exist.
Okay, and the rain.
Yeah, the rain. But let's just keep it as simple as
Okay, let's keep
possible
it
by
as
just
sun.
saying the sun, right?
No problem.
So no problem. So long as the sun exists, the tree depends on the sun. Here we're just looking at the aspect of dependency.
Okay,
yeah?
no problem. The tree needs the sun. Yep, I understand that.
Now
okay.
the sun also requires something else in order to exist.
Okay, let's say the solar system, our universe.
Right. Okay, so it's part of its own galaxy, it's part of its own Milky, whatever it is.
Yes.
And then you keep going out and out and out. And the point is,
Yeah, but I can catch you and I can say, well, hold on a second. Infinite amount of time, if the sun is there and the tree is there, infinitely, what's your problem?
okay, that proves my point, because
Oh, does
so
it?
long as you have the sun, so long as you have the tree, you always require something there
Okay.
which is outside of itself
Okay.
in order to explain it, number one, and in order to generate it, number two.
Okay, so you're telling me, in a nutshell, is that even if we go with the argument's sake, even though we don't believe infinite exists in the real world, argument's sake, we give it to our atheist friends. They go, look, have infinite for yourself, be happy, do backflips. Even if that's the case, infinitely, that still shows that the tree needs the sun and the sun needs the universe, infinitely. It's
Yes.
still dependent.
Yes.
It still doesn't solve your problem.
Yes.
Okay, what's your next? What's the
So,
next step?
so the universe itself is.
Yeah.
You can't argue that the universe is a necessary existence, because the universe could be arranged in another way.
Okay.
Anything which could be arranged in another way and conceivably could be out of existence cannot be a necessary existence.
Yeah, you're right. Like when the universe, I don't know, some say it starts from ex nihilo, you know, there was nothingness there, and other things. So yes, I understand what you're saying. So even if it's infinitely there, it's still dependent, and it could be any other way.
Yes.
When the Big Bang happened, it could have been Mars together with Neptune and the Sun right next to it.
Right.
It could have been.
It could, yeah. It could.
Okay,
so there's an infinite amount of arrangements.
Okay, but how does this prove this necessary cause that you was talking about, existence?
Well, because then we're saying, well, what does the universe depend on? Or what is the universe contingent on? Or what necessary thing? Or what thing is the universe? So if you say it's another possible thing, then we keep going like that until we have to end at a necessary existence.
Okay, so tell me if I'm wrong, yeah? Even if I said I'm an atheist, infinitely, they all depend on something, that still begs the question, if they infinitely rely on something, they need an external necessary cause. At this point, I would use the word necessary existence.
Necessary,
not cause. Necessary existence.
Yeah.
I mean necessary existence. Let's make that, because some people have a phobia, they get itchy when they hear the word cause.
Yeah.
They need a necessary existence.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's ex nihilo, it doesn't make sense. Is that what you're saying? Or it still requires...
Either way, if it's whether the universe was generated from substratum or was generated ex nihilo, whatever it is, it still requires something else to depend on it. It depends on something else. So
either way, where I go, I'm kind of stuck.
Yes.
In my culture, they say basically, if you have a moustache and beard, if you spit upwards, it's going to touch your moustache. If you spit downwards, it's going to get into your beard. So you're stuck. So
something like that.
Okay, so that was the argument you made.
Yes.
Now, I was at the discussion. I heard it. I did not understand his response because you came very firm. You was very sure. He was talking about something I don't know.
So what he was ready for.
Yes, and a lot of atheists do this. I've seen this. I've been monitoring some people. They throw these, you know, the fallacy of this and the fallacy. They give these names and they think they've answered it. And I feel like he did that. He came in and said, "Oh, there would have been an infinite." I genuinely didn't understand him at all.
Right.
Did you understand him?
At one point, he said that contingency and causation are the same thing. Yeah. Which are linguistically not, if you look at any dictionary, and also from a philosophical perspective, are certainly not.
Okay.
So he was saying that, well, because he's used to, you know, countering the cosmological argument with causation.
I think he wasn't expecting
that.
No,
I know this guy because I watched hours of his debates before and he says very similar things in all debates.
Yeah, and
so he has a high degree of predictability. Whereas when I go and debate people, I try and change it each time.
So you're telling me that what you're using today might not be what we'll be using in the future?
No way, yeah.
Okay,
it could be something completely different angle completely.
So you've got to be careful about that, yeah.
Right? So what I'm saying is, no, there's going to be obviously some overlap.
Of course, obviously.
But
you got some tricks.
Yeah. But with his one, I realized that he was very used to putting forward conventional...
typical
arguments for interrogations for the Ghazalian cosmological argument. And they don't even know Ghazali actually made this argument. And a lot of these guys don't read Al-Ghazali. It came from Al-Ghazali. It's our guy, yani.
Yeah, we need to make that clear, man.
We need to make that very clear.
William Lane Craig is what?
William Lane Craig, who argues for the Trinity, and he talks about three-headed dog, as being Godhead, we call it doghead more like. That's why, you know, I mean, I think it was refuted for that.
It was a very bad analogy. Very bad.
But when you look at his book, I don't think any of his references are actually the Arabic references.
Really?
He always, because he can't read Arabic. Ghazali was Arabic.
Yeah. That's what we have to the primary source.
Yeah, so he was, all of his references, I believe, were, and it's not a problem to quote translations, but were either French or English.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of, to be honest with you, I could spend time criticizing him and other people who try and quote Al-Ghazali, but more so on the fact that they then believe in the Trinity. Well, if they read the same book Al-Ghazali wrote, Al-Iqtisad fi al-I'tiqad, or other books that they quote from, they go and attack the Trinity on cosmological grounds. So they say the cosmological argument is a reason for the Trinity not being the case.
Exactly.
But they forget about that part of the argument.
And you know what happens when they do this? You see a lot of people, because a lot of these atheists, they don't really have discussions with Muslims. So what they do is they see the Christians using the cosmological argument, and then they will come with the issue of, okay, but how do we know this one, or if it's two or three? They get it from that kind of debate and discussion they hear William Lane Craig having with atheists.
They have no. Look, here's the thing. Here's the thing. We have an advantage. Okay, we have access to things they don't have access to, and a lot of the tradition is either in Greek or in Arab. This existence of God question, there's 3 main languages. You can say 4 if you want to bring in Hebrew. Or maybe Latin as well. But really and truly, if we're talking about the times that we've just mentioned, it's Arabic, Greek, and English language, yeah? Now, we have access to the English, but they don't have access to the Arabic in the same way. So they'd have to go through translations. It's not going to give you the same kind of feeling. It's not going to give you the same... You're going to have to do a lot of translating, like mumkin, al-wujud, and wajib al-wujud has, a very particular meaning in Arabic language. Even when you try and translate it, it's a little bit difficult. And so there's always going to be issues. So this is a field, actually, where there's a lot of advantages for the Arabic speaker, especially when we're talking about Ghazalian arguments, or Ibn Sina's arguments, or Ibn Rushd's arguments, or whatever it may be, or Al-Kindi, or Farabi, or Ibn Taymiyyah. Or all those individuals who have contributed to that discourse. But the point I'm making is, to you is that what were we talking about? Sorry, before.
Yeah, sorry. So we was talking about that they go to.
So they go to those arguments, right?
Yes.
And what they don't know is that Al-Ghazali actually made more than one formulation of the argument. So I'll give you an easy example. They
don't have access to that.
So they don't have access to that.
Yeah.
It's because you have to look at his mutawalat. His
and even if they did,
books.
they won't truly understand it properly.
Yeah. So I'll give you one example of causation, right? So causation, they say, is the fallacy of composition. Yeah. They say it's the fallacy of composition. Why? Because this is called mereology, by the way. There's something called mereology. Now, mereology is the study of parts and wholes.
Yeah.
Okay. And in mereological study, it's known that not just the part of something doesn't necessarily have to mimic the whole of it. So in other words, there's 2 fallacies that are commonly written about: the fallacy of division and fallacy of composition. The fallacy of composition is that you're reasoning that the part has to have the same characteristics of the whole, and the fallacy of composition is when you say that the whole has to have the composition of the part. This is mereological study.
Yeah.
Now, Al-Ghazali, he was very aware of this, by the way, when he said, everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe begins to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. Yeah. He believed in the creation ex nihilo, from nothing.
Yeah.
And he was aware of the fact that someone could say that, what if you say that the universe comes from... How do you know that the universe comes from nothing?
Yeah.
How do you know that there is a cause?
Yeah.
He didn't say we know because we're reasoning inductively, which is Hume's argument and Bertrand Russell's argument.
Yeah.
He actually said a priori, and he had an argument for metaphysical causation.
Okay.
And if you have an argument for metaphysical causation, that undercuts all of the problems of induction and then all the problems of composition. Because no longer are we talking about causation in terms of what you see.
Oh, you're talking ontologically, not cosmologically.
Absolutely,
yes.
Right? So you're talking... Yes, I like it. Now we're talking, right?
We're talking
So he made cosmological argument, but he also made an ontological one. Right? And it wasn't just Al-Ghazali, it was others. But people don't know this about him. And by extension, people smear the argument by saying, oh, it's a fallacy of this and fallacy of that.
Yeah.
But they don't know. Bertrand Russell had no... By the way, Bertrand Russell wrote a book called A History of Western Civilization. And there was a section called Mohammedan Philosophy.
Yeah.
Okay, which is, I don't know, it's a section. And he mentions only 3 people, or 3 scholars and thinkers at that time. He mentions Avicenna, which is Ibn Sina. He mentions Al-Ghazali, who calls Al-Ghazal. Or Ghazal, yeah? Ghazal. And he mentions Ibn Rushd.
Yeah.
And you can see Bertrand Russell's knowledge of those things was like incredibly shallow. Because at his time, when he was writing in the early 1900s, not many translations were available to him. Maybe a few were.
Okay.
But certainly he does not know the intricacies of their argument. So that allowed him to attack them in a way which was actually, I would say, problematic. And by extension now, Enlightenment people that are affected by his Enlightenment thought, when they come to attack the argument, they don't know exactly what the argument is.
Yes.
There's always going to be a surprise for them.
Yes.
Right? Number 2, when Bertrand Russell attacked the contingency argument, he wrote a book against Leibniz. Now, Leibniz had his own formulation of the contingency argument with premises. You know, he had this premise 1, premise 2, premise 3. And there's a lot of overlap between the contingency argument of Leibniz and the contingency arguments of the medieval Arab philosophers and thinkers. But Leibniz's argument is different to those arguments.
Okay.
it's not the same argument, and it doesn't proceed in the same way. So by assuming, a lot of these people think contingency argument, Leibniz, because that's the Western, Eurocentric mind.
Yes.
So contingency argument, Leibniz, straight away Leibniz, because that's or Anselm of Canterbury, who wrote in the early 11th century, whatever it was, right?
Okay.
So these are the two individuals they associate, and Anselm of Canterbury. His rendition of the contingency argument was even attacked by Leibniz himself, who was a theist.
Okay.
It's not something I would ever go out and say. I don't agree with it. I think it's a bit of mumbo jumbo, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Anselm of Canterbury's rendition, okay, there might be an element of truth, but for me, I wouldn't use that argument at all.
Okay.
Right?
What I'm going to do is, obviously, we're limited to time.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just. This is an area where I'm quite interested.
It's good. You can delve in. It's just limited to time.
Yeah.
How do you think the debate went? What would you improve on? What feedback would you have? Like, did he answer your questions? Just a general, feedback. What do you think?
I really enjoyed. I think one of the strengths of the debate was when I was countering his questions, his interrogations, because he mentioned a lot of things which I could then easily kind of provide.
It was off topic as well. It was off topic.
And what I like to do in debates, I like to answer everyone's questions. Like I did with David. One thing you'll find is that if you bring 10 interrogations, I'll answer your 10 interrogations. But obviously someone will argue and say, well, someone can bring 20, right? And I've got 10 minutes to respond, which means I have to give 30 seconds answers for each of those things. Or someone can give 30. I'll be able to do it. I can do it. I can do it in 20 seconds or 15 seconds. However, obviously, if I'm trying to answer one of your interrogations in 15 seconds, it's not going to be the same.
You need to understand, because you need to understand with debates, it's not just about answering, it's tactical. Because if he's using that and he's going to waste your majority of time, and there's a question that he can't answer, and he wants you to waste the majority of that time, do you think it's wise for you to do that?
If I have the time, and I think I can do it, I will do it.
Why would you come and say, you know what, all these issues you said we've done videos about it's irrelevant. We've answered these topics. Why don't you go down that route?
I think that a lot of people would see that as a cop-out. Answering questions in debate is very important, because then you can come around and say some of them were relevant. Some of them we can group them together. Right?
Okay.
But some of them were good entry points for our own kind of arguments. Like, for example, when he was talking about miracles, I think one of the most amazing parts of this debate, this guy's a naturalist, and I've seen him debate many times. He actually did say science can, naturalism, materialism, science can unpack or can explain 99%. He started by saying 100%. And then he changed to saying 99%. So 1% here, he's agreeing there's a 1% thing that science can't uncover.
Yeah.
So that is supernatural then, right? Because the naturalism, if you're saying 99% of things can be uncovered from naturalism, that means 1% of things can be uncovered through supernaturalism. Yeah, so that's all we're saying as well. We're saying that 1% of miracles are not going to happen every day, right? But that area of miracles, I think, was very powerful, only because it made people realize, I think, a lot of atheists realize the extent to which miracles are actually possible.
And he was saying something about, which you agreed on later as well, because he was saying that the consciousness is the brain. And I think we've gone through this argument before, is that we know every single cell in our body replaces itself.
Yes.
And if that's the case, if you're saying the brain is connected to the consciousness, and that he was giving arguments like if somebody passes out, etc., you don't have the conscious living, etc., even though some people have out-of-body experiences. But if every cell in our body replaces itself, and the brain has cells, and if those cells replace itself, then why are we still the same person?
Yeah, so exactly. That's a good point. The ship of Theseus. It's like if you have a ship and all of those boards of the ship were replaced, is it the same ship?
Yeah, exactly. Anything else you want to add on?
No, I think that it was a pleasure debating him.
You plan on having such debates, because this was very neutral. He wasn't like someone that's an.
We are gonna have. We have to make some confirmations, but I think there could be a big debate coming up.
Inshallah.
And it will happen. If it happens, it will happen quite soon, actually. Inshallah. So people are going to be aware of that.
I think that's going to be the biggest one. And keep an eye, brothers and sisters. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, it will probably be one of the biggest ones in terms of venue, in terms of...
Yes. Wait till you find out, inshallah. That's it, brothers and sisters. Hope you guys have benefited. Leave your comments on the section below in the comment section, and tell us how you think the debate went yourself. If you haven't watched it, there'll be a link. Go and watch the debate. And we want to thank you guys for supporting Salam. We are expanding to different areas, inshallah. Keep an eye, inshallah, and you will see and inshallah grow with us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.